Hello, world. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you may be. We are thrilled to be here. The Canadian Guild of Music Supervisors is thrilled to kick off the first ever Sound and Vision virtual sync conference. We know there are people tuning in from around the world, and this is our first, I'd like to say annual, as opposed to ever, but annual education week. We are very, very excited to kick off this initiative, and we're thrilled that you could join us from everywhere. We see the chats coming in, and it's super cool that people are tuning in from everywhere. My name is Michael Perlmutter, and I have the honor and privilege to be the president of the Guild of Music Supervisors Canada, and alongside Natasha Dupre, who is the vice president of the Guild, who we'll hear from very shortly. Hello, Natasha.
Hello.
Nice to see you in Vancouver.
Rainy Vancouver.
Cold Toronto. So this year, 2020, Zoom it is. And we hope that in 2021, we can do this in person. And in addition, have an online component so we can have, again, people from around the world here. I just want to, it's really great to be able to bring the community together in any way that we can in any year, and especially this year. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of information about the Guild. So if you pardon me, I'm just going to read a little bit of our mission statement. The Guild of Music Supervisors Canada, GMSC, is a collective of Canadian music supervisors whose mission is to promote the craft of music supervision for the mutual benefit of all media stakeholders in film, television, games, advertising, trailers, and any emerging media. The Guild provides an environment in which the knowledge, resources, and skills specific to music supervision are expanded and shared as a means to sustain the highest level of professionalism and evolve the collective expertise. And as we will experience this week in our Education Week, the Guild is an educational and professional resource for those working in related fields across all media spectrum. We wish to educate and make aware the field of music supervision to those we work with: artists, labels, writers, publishers, sync agents, managers, and all of those working in the film media world: directors, producers, post-production folks, editors, and the list goes on. And we encourage the next generation of music supervisors in this ever-growing field. The GMSC, which is what we call ourselves here in Canada, is proud to be affiliated with the chapters in the United States and the UK, Europe, and collectively, the Guild have at least 300 members around the world, possibly more. You can follow us on socials. They'll be posted throughout the chat. They're also on websites and the soundandvisioncanada.com website. In May, we lost a dear colleague of ours, Vice President David Heyman, suddenly in May, and we just wanted to honor his memory and his legacy, and both will live on forever. Big thank you to our sponsors. This could not happen without our sponsors. We have 5 fantastic sponsors. We have High Priestess Music Publishing. We have Third Side Music. We have Arts and Crafts. We have Cadence Music, and we have Simba Music Publishing. We thank those 5 companies very much, and they're fabulous individuals who have made this possible for us. You will see their logos everywhere. You will see websites of theirs also be posted throughout the week. And now I'd like to introduce again our fabulous vice president in Vancouver, Natasha Dupre. Natasha, what's going on?
Well, you know, it's raining, and I put Bailey's in my coffee, so please don't judge me, but it's, you know, it's past noon here. So I'm really excited for the panels this week. I'm pretty much just going to log in and listen in the background to everything. It's going to be like I have a social life again. There'll just be like people talking, and I'll be chilling. It's great that we're starting out with how do you want to be a music, what is it exactly called? So you want to be a because, you know, I think that we could really use a lot more great music supervisors in this country, and it does seem like a mysterious task to how to become one. So there's some smart people going to teach everybody that. And then basically just a week of keynotes, panels, and musical guests, and what else do we have to do right now? So we might as well. Michael, how are you? What have you been up to?
I'm pretty good. I've been preparing for this a little bit. Happy to finally have it start.
I like
I've been doing some cooking. I've been doing some cooking, which I haven't done in years, so that's been good. And yes, I dressed up for the occasion. I figured it's like our opening night gala, so I figured I'd dress up. Probably the first time in 7 months.
when you say cooking, do you mean like warming up pizzas or like ordering?
No, I'm talking about steaks and chickens and salads. And yes, I'm not a vegetarian. I'm sorry for all the vegans and vegetarians out there, but just trying to, it's a good way to take your mind off of things and kind of focus on something else for a little bit. Hey, Natasha, how many Zoom calls have you been on in the last 6-7 months?
I don't know, just like a billion. It's all Zoom and gloom out there, but this is, a lot.
Zoom and gloom, that's an interesting one. Although it's not that gloomy, it's getting a little bit better. Every day seems to get a bit better, especially in November, even though it gets to get, the weather's a bit gloomy. But
I've been experimenting with nachos a lot, and I've moved on to tachos, which is you get tater tots and you make them into nachos, tachos.
And for those who aren't familiar with tater tots in other parts of the world, what exactly are tater tots, Natasha?
They're just, like a little, it's like a French fry, but it's like a hash brown. It's just like a nugget of goodness, and made even better when you melt cheese and salsa and things on top of it. So, I did a lot of cooking at the beginning of the pandemic, and now I'm bored of it. I did baking, and now I'm just like straight up nachos, chips and dip, wine o'clock, and that's about it.
And you're going to FedEx some of that to Toronto, I gather. Is that right?
You guys have nachos there, tachos there.
Not home cooked tachos. That's something new. And the reason that we're chit chatting a little bit, guys, is that we don't start till 4:30, and so we just want to make sure all the tech world is solid and we get people on. There's over 200 people on this call, which is just fantastic. Yes, poutine is a fabulous dish. I have not had a lot of poutine recently. For Americans out there, it's incredibly great French fries with some cheese curd and gravy and or thousands of other toppings you can put on it. And it comes initially from our La Belle Province here in Canada, Quebec. And there are poutineries everywhere. So if you have never had one, please come visit when you can and have some poutine here in Canada. I can't believe we're talking about poutine.
There's a lot of snack talk in the world right now. Here's another snack I'm really into mochis. Do you ever eat mochis?
No.
Do you know? Okay, so it's like rice cake with ice cream inside, like a bite-sized little mochi, M-O-C-H-I, mochi. Excuse me if I'm saying it wrong. It's the greatest thing ever. You just get like ice cream in a rice cake and you just pop it in your mouth. You don't even need to.
That's good. It's like the macaroni and cheese balls that you can get, but different.
Oh God, so good.
That's excellent. That's excellent. And I think you're on a panel at some point this week. Is that right, Natasha?
I'm on a panel. I'm moderating a panel about Tiny Pretty Things, which is going to be everyone's new favorite Netflix series about like ballerina drama, because ballerina drama is the greatest drama. And the trailer just dropped this morning at 9 a.m. So if you go on YouTube and look up Tiny Pretty Things, you can see all the ballerina drama. It's super exciting. And there is a ton of music from lots of Canadian artists, some of them who might actually even be on this call. And so I'm really excited. It's going to be amazing. So that's what the panel's about on Thursday. Me, the showrunner, co-music supervisor, editor, and composer are just going to kind of break down how it works in a TV series. And I'm not doing, but the same thing's happening with the DoorDash ad campaign as well. I got to remember what day that is. I'm really excited about that one because I don't really work in the ad world a lot, and that's going to be amazing. That is on 2 days from now on the 18th.
Excellent. And, just as a reminder, if you would like to register for the panels, go to soundandvisioncanada.com. Everything is on that site. And, registrations, it's filling up. It's been an amazing response, as we can see from around the world. So we're super thrilled We have a few minutes left, so I wanted to get back to a couple of things here. We made a conscious decision to make this a free conference. And in conjunction with that decision, we respectfully partnered with two superb organizations, and we are suggesting donations to these organizations. They are Black Youth Helpline and Black Mental Health Canada. And our moderator of the first panel will talk a little bit more about that. And as you can see in the chat, it's the lovely producer, Eligh from the Guild, is letting everybody see the websites. And we really encourage you this week to please support those organizations. And we're very thankful they allowed us to partner with them. Again, you'll hear a little bit more shortly. So, couple more minutes. We're very excited to get going. We've got a great first panel. Once again, my name is Michael Perlmutter. I'm the president of the Guild of Music Supervisors Canada. We are here with Natasha Dupre, who's the vice president in Vancouver. We'd love you all to get involved. It seems like you are. Chat's blowing up. There are, I guess there's places to raise your hand, maybe. I don't even know. Even though I've been on a lot of Zoom calls, it's still a little, I might be a little unzoomed by now or zoomed out. Also want to thank a bunch of different people, which we'll do throughout the week, but specifically Eligh, who's been the producer and the captaining the ship. She's had a lot of help from Danielle, Lindy, Natasha, of course, Warren Bray, who's done beautiful artwork, Mikaila, Gavin Alexander, and a few others. We thank you very, very much. The Guild thanks you for helping out. If I've missed anybody, we'll keep thanking you all week long. Please note one thing really important. There's one link per day. So if you're on the link, stay on it all day. You don't need 14 links. So each link each day gives you all the panels. We have this panel coming up now. We have a panel after that. And then we have David Strickland performing. So we hope you can stay with us, join us. You can grab a drink, listen to some really lovely people talk. We're all going to learn something. I've been doing it a few years, but I know I'm going to learn quite a lot. Again, I want to thank the sponsors. It's really important. This would not have happened without the sponsors. High Priestess Music Publishing, Third Side Music Publishing, Arts and Crafts, Cadence Music Group, Simba Music Publishing. Thank you very much. Natasha, over to you for the introduction of our very, very first panel for the Sound and Vision Virtual Sync Conference. I'm waiting for that clock to hit 4:30, just so people can hear, everybody can hear your introduction to our fantastic moderator, and whenever you're ready.
It hasn't hit 4:30 yet.
Right.
Anyhow. Like I said earlier, if you were listening, this is going to be a great panel. It's called So You Want to Be a Music Supervisor, and Amy's going to be the amazing moderator. I first worked with Amy at Casablanca, where she worked for over a decade. Now I'm going to read the spiel. Before moving to Arts and Crafts Music, within her role as Director of Publishing and Licensing at Arts and Crafts, Amy pitches large-scale catalog of songs for film trailers, advertising, video games, and television, as well as oversees the day-to-day within the department. In addition to pitching, Amy organizes showcases for clients and songwriters with TV networks, music supervisors, and advertisers. She also develops new writers, arranges co-writing sessions, coordinates and hosts songwriting camps, and scouts for talent. At Arts and Crafts Music, Amy works with Broken Social Scene, Old Man Saxon, Dan Mangan, Sarah McDougall, the Northern Pikes, and many, many more. She is also on the board of directors for Music Publishers Canada and the vice chair on the Factor board, and one of my favorite people. Take it away, Amy.
I love that introduction. Thank you, Natasha. So nice to see your face. Thank you, Michael. And welcome to Sound and Vision, So You Want to Be a Music Supervisor panel. As Natasha said, I'm Amy Eligh. I'm the Director of Publishing and Licensing at Arts and Crafts and also the moderator for this panel. Before we get started, I did want to say a few things about who our charitable partners are. So as you know, Sound and Vision is a free virtual event with suggested donations made to one of these two Canadian charities with whom we've partnered with. First one is Black Youth Helpline, which is a registered charitable not-for-profit organization with a vision of productive futures for Canada's children and youth. Their mission is primary prevention of social, psychological breakdown in communities through a focus on education, health, and community development. The second charity is Black Mental Health Canada, which is a volunteer, nonprofit, community-based organization that helps meet the mental health needs of the diverse Black communities in Canada. Their mission is to facilitate access to affordable, culturally safe, and affirming mental health services to the Black community through education, advocacy, and provision of resources. Links to both charities can be found in the chat, and we're hoping for a $2 to $5 donation per panel or workshop. So now we can get on to the introductions of my fabulous panelists who are experts in the field of music supervision. So we have Mikaila Simmons, Danielle, Lindy, and Sian O'Byrne, and I will let each of them speak to their roles within their companies. Mikaila, how about you take it away?
Hello, everybody. Hey, Amy, how's it going? Good to see your face. It's good to see anybody's face these days, honestly. So I'm Mikaila Simmons. I work at Instinct Entertainment. I've been there for in and around 7 years now. I primarily work in television and film. I've worked on projects like Mary Kills People, The Handmaid's Tale Season 1. I worked on the feature film The Grizzlies. Honestly, I've worked on about 15 to 20 projects in the last 7 years, and the list keeps going, but I'm so grateful to be here and excited to meet you all virtually.
Amazing. Thanks, Mikaila. Danielle, you're up.
Hi, everybody. My name is Danielle Lindy. I have a company called Lindy & Co. Music Services, started around 2013. Through Lindy & Co., I am currently the acting head of music supervision advertising at Audio House Vapor Music in Toronto. But I work on different projects than just advertising through my company. I recently worked on a short film for writer-director Eligh Gold, soundtrack indie electronic, and it was recently submitted to some film festivals, so hopefully fingers crossed. And I also produced some original songs for an award-winning children's book called Happy the Birthday Bird, and worked on a couple of spots recently, one for Loblaws where we licensed a cover of Billy Idol's Dancing with Myself, and also some branded content for Loblaws that's going to come out soon with some recognizable songs from the 80s and 90s.
Amazing. Thank you. Sian. Is she here or I missed it?
Hi, everyone.
Oh, there
Sorry.
she is.
Excited to be a part. Thank you. Yeah, so I work with a music supervision and clearances company called The Song Rep. And yeah, I mainly work on film and TV, a lot of Hallmark and Netflix and Lifetime mainly, a few others here and there, some indie stuff too. A lot of Christmas movies, so always looking for Christmas music all the time. I think probably with the pandemic, that was like my first break from Christmas movies in like, I don't know, probably like 5 years. So I was like constantly working on them for a while. So yeah, but yeah, excited to be a part.
Awesome. Thanks, Sian. We're happy to have you here. Okay, so first question. I'm going to pitch this to Mikaila, but Danielle and Sian, you can jump in if you want as well, because I'm sure you've all heard this. You know, when we start in the music industry and you're like, what's the job where I can just listen to music and go see cool bands and get free tickets and, like, you know, like be the cool guy with parties. And everyone thinks music supervision. Is that true? I don't think so. Anyways, Mikaila, you jump in first and let's talk about it.
Let's talk about like expectation versus reality.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so I was very interested in music supervision, starting with Gilmore Girls, which is very rare for somebody my age. Most people start music supervision from the OC, but Gilmore Girls has a low pro, fantastic soundtrack. And I, like many people, listened to it and said, oh, wouldn't it be so cool to sit down and pick all of these songs out of thin air and license them? And The reality is that you're working with very, very quick deadlines, fluctuating budgets, but usually there is a strain on budget. There's usually a strain on time. And your job is to work with the showrunner or with the producer or director and to execute their vision. A lot of people have the misconception that music supervision is about you picking your favorite music and putting it in a bunch of TV shows. That really isn't true. I mean, I've worked on Vikings, for instance, and I listened to 8th century Middle Eastern folk music that literally there's only one person in Russia in the world that can produce. And it varies from that to R&B to indigenous hip hop, from Nunavut. And I definitely do sit down and listen to some of that in the day, but at the end of the day, it has very little to do with me or any other music supervisor and everything to do with what you're working on. And also managing the budget expectations, and also whenever you can, getting that perfect song that the director has had written into the script for the last 5 drafts and try and see their dreams come to fruition.
That's great. Yeah, you hit all the key points.
Yeah.
What about you ladies? Do you have anything else? Do you have anything to say?
I agree completely. It is a lot about the client's needs, the budget restrictions. It's sometimes I'll speak to the ad world and sync licensing. You're dealing with a lot of people. There are a lot of cooks. You've got the ad creatives, and you've got, in my case, I'll be working for like an audio house. So I've got the, executive creative director at the audio house that I'm also answering to on some level at times. You've got the agencies working for the brand. So you have to answer to the brand as well. And sometimes it's interesting that the agency and the brand don't necessarily agree on the direction that the agency wants to take, and you have to start all over. But yeah, there's just a lot of moving parts. And you're definitely not necessarily just like pulling music out of the air that you think is cool. There's a brief, there's, thoughts that are coming from the director. There's thoughts that are coming from sometimes the producer at the ad agency wants to put in their 2 cents. Like it's really an interesting process that involves a lot of people, actually. So yeah, agreed.
And with every new cut and every new pass, somebody can veto a track. So something can enter the mix during assembly, and then after 2 or 3 cuts pass, after the editors hand over creative to the directors, things change, and they can change all the way up to the mix playback, which is basically the final Hail Mary. This is when we finalize everything in the mix. So I didn't realize how many opportunities there are to veto before I got the gig and started doing it.
Yeah, you can easily lose the opportunity to have a say or place what you thought might work. It could easily go away often. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's definitely a balancing act, and I think so many different moving parts and throughout the whole time that we're working on a project. And also, as Danielle was saying, there's so many different people that are involved in each step along the way, and they all have their opinions, and music is subjective. So, I mean, not everybody's going to love the perfect song that you think is like definitely the one, and you kind of just have to roll with the punches there. That's kind of the way it goes. But yeah.
Sure. And that sort of, we call it in the business temp love, if everyone's nodding their head, if the project, you get the project and it comes with, a song, a reference that the creatives love, and, you're tasked to find something to replace it, maybe because the budget doesn't allow for it, or some other reason the artist doesn't want to approve, or et cetera, et cetera. You know, and then it can be quite grueling to replace this song that was fallen in love with, but not really chosen with any like consideration to the budget, or whether or not it was possible to obtain. So yeah, there's a lot of different obstacles and barriers and obstacle course for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when one of the showrunners or creatives is a self-proclaimed music lover.
Right.
And you will always get, like, I think probably about 50% of the projects I've worked on, there's somebody in the higher tier of creative decisions that loves music and loves like deep cuts of Velvet Underground and loves like Joy Division and all of these amazing independent artists that sound independent when you list them out, but independent music actually, like, the genre is different than the reality of independent music, as I'm sure there are a lot of artists in this panel and chat know. Joy Division, like, they're all actually signed to major labels, so it's not as easy as one might consider to get the rights.
Or even interesting situations in advertising where, like, you know, the higher up person comes to the table with, let's get like this really hardcore punk rock band, you know, sometimes that band is just not interested, though ads are changing. You know, it's a lot easier to get very cool music in ads. There's no stigma, but you know, sometimes you do have to consider the artist when you're choosing them, and politically whether or not they'd be, you know, interested in that kind of project.
Mm-hmm. I've also had the hurdle of, which I'm sure you guys have too, of a producer or an actor or someone involved in the film that has their best friend that has a song that they're like, oh, it's totally easy to clear. And then you find out there are like 4 or 5 major publishers and co-writers. And it's like, sorry, you can't quite get that for the figure you were looking at.
And yeah, to your point, like, part of being a supervisor is not just listening to music or choosing music or working with people to choose music. It's also clearing music. And that process is a giant aspect of our jobs. It's like massive. I don't want to get ahead of any of this discussion, but it's so involved. It's so involved. It can take a very long time to just clear one song, and make sure that you're actually crossing the T's and dotting the I's on all of the legal, you know, aspects of that process. So I don't know if anybody wants to speak to that or if we want to jump to something else, but I that is such a huge part of my world, and making sure that all of those things fit into the budget, you know, when we're looking at the license fee, but also whether or not, and again, I don't want to get ahead of things or speak in ways that maybe are too complex, but you know, we've got the master side and the publishing side, and sometimes the master has union fees attached to it, and we have to make sure those fit into the budget. It just sort of goes on and on. Basically, to be able to present the full budget to client for approval can be a big process.
Throw in a sample and forget about it.
Yeah, and then you're clear in that case, you're clearing, you know, several songs at the same time with possibly several writers, and you know, possibly musicians' union fees attached to the master, or SAG-AFTRA attached to the master if the album was created in the United States under a major label and is a signatory with SAG-AFTRA. So yeah, it can get really labor intensive.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I'd say it's probably one of the most important parts of our job is the clearance, for sure. It's the most difficult, and probably something that people don't really consider when they go into this job is how complicated it can be. Once you kind of get into it, of course, once you learn the rules and things, it's a little bit easier. But there are a lot of different moving parts that it's hard to really learn without just kind of experience.
So
I'd say
that
it's
actually helps me jump into something. I'm going to skip one step that I was going to ask you guys, but I think this is a good segue to another part. What kind of steps would you recommend for an aspiring supervisor to look into? And this is part of it. The paperwork is a huge part of your job. It's a huge part of my job when clearing songs for you. So I think that, you know, especially when we have interns that come in and work for us, we ask them, we send them a bunch of websites and ask them to Google a bunch of stuff. Like what does a master license look like? What does a publishing license look like? Like that kind of stuff to maybe prepare ahead of time before they apply for the internship or the coordinator job, so at least they have some knowledge. I don't know. You guys are the music supervisors, so jump in.
I think that's a great idea. I myself took some classes. So obviously for people who are interested in becoming supervisors, or not necessarily obviously, but nowadays, I'm dating myself, but nowadays, you know, there are a lot of music business programs and professional music programs. And so, you know, I've noticed a lot of younger people who got into the business have gone to Harris or Trebas or Humber. I think they all might have programs. And I believe that Ryerson even has like a program now. But I myself did a class at George Brown, which was very useful. It was called Legal Art Issues in Arts, Media, and Entertainment. And I also, this might be a step for when you're already in a position and you want to augment your knowledge base, but like you can take an entertainment law certificate at Osgoode Hall Law School at York University if you want to, you know, learn more. But, you know, take a class in music publishing, take a class in entertainment law contracts if you can. Those are amazing things to do to round out your knowledge base so that you have the creative and you have the legal, you know, left brain, right brain, really important.
Totally.
Mm-hmm.
Sean, do you want to go with how did you start?
I actually started out, I did an arts entertainment management program, which here in Vancouver, and that was actually not really anything to do with what I do now, but it mainly it gave me music business and like publisher and labor experience a little bit, and then also practicum placements. So that's kind of how I got to working with the song rep with Valerie Biggin. And so she ended up bringing me on and I interned with her for a while. I think it's like 7 years ago now. And yeah, so that is kind of how I just kind of learned through her. And that's a really great way to do it. Like Danielle was saying, there wasn't really any sort of music supervisor program or anything when I was starting out either. So kind of finding someone to kind of take you under their wing for sure. We have 2 new coordinators with the company that Emma and Holly, who just started with us now, they actually were through my program too. So it's a really great way to do it for sure. What about you, Mikaila?
So I started at back in the day when I was there, it was radio and television at Ryerson, but now it's the RTA School of Media. And when I was there, I wasn't 100% sure what I wanted to do. I don't think I even realized that music supervision was a legit school. And at that point, I bought a couple of books about music business and music licensing, read those front to back. And then I had a really great mentor in the music business program called Stephen Ehrlich. Stephen Ehrlich was huge in the Canadian music scene all through the 90s and 2000s. And he's now an incredible professor. And he took me under his wing and introduced me to Sony music licensing. on the label end, where I interned all the way through school, which I guess is not legal now, but I started in second year and went all the way through to fourth year. And at that point, I met my current colleagues. Dondrea and Jeremy used to be at the company before I started. And we kept in touch after I met at a Christmas party. And I really do think that more than anything, building a network of people that do this, that you can call upon. And when there is a vacancy, they can kind of slip you a note and say, hey, why don't you apply for this? It's great because there aren't very many, especially in Canada, there aren't very many companies that do what we do. And it can be very, very daunting to imagine just breaking out on your own without having experience working under somebody. So I got a note from Jeremy and he said, hey, I'm leaving, why don't you apply? And I've been there ever since. I started 2 months out of school and here I am, haggard and 7 years older.
But yeah, I mean, to your point though, it is kind of hard. It's kind of hard to, it's still a niche industry to an extent. And so if you can't get your foot in the door directly working for a music supervisor, there are other things to do that are really informative anyway. Like for example, you could work at a music publishing company, or you could work at a label, pitching music and licensing music. Or, you know, I had a catalog before I became a music supervisor, and I worked at a publisher. I worked at a production music library as well. My route was, you know, it was not completely direct. I eventually started working as a supervisor at another audio house here in Toronto, and then my company, and et cetera, et cetera. But, you know, there's different ways of getting in. You can work at an audio house if you're interested in the ad side, or just want to, you know, start somewhere. You could start doing stock searches there, even if you're, let's say, starting as the office manager, and you make it clear that you're interested in music and music supervision, and, you know, maybe they'll start training you a little bit. So, you know, there's different routes to get in, especially if you're waiting for a break, because it is somewhat competitive and niche.
Yeah, I would highly recommend. I mean, even I can't speak for Dondrea, but I know that Dondrea worked at Red Brick. I think with Amy, you were
Yes,
with
you were.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think like take anything that's adjacent to music licensing, and work your way up, because you'll go to parties with people, well, when we can go to parties again, with people that do what you want to do. You'll rub shoulders with people, and for better or for worse, it's a very small community. And I think that we all kind of work off of the rumor mill a little bit. Everybody kind of is tapped into who's hiring, when somebody's leaving, and jumping on opportunities that way can be really advantageous.
Yeah. The community is key. Mm-hmm. This is the guild is a nice thing to have. Yes. Very valued.
I'm seeing a couple of questions about the books. I don't actually remember the titles. One of them was Music Licensing 101, and the other was called Everything You Need to Know About the Music Business. I mean, this was also a decade ago, so they might be outdated. But
some of them are continuously updated. Some of the more classic ones, I find they'll like teach them in the curriculums, and they're typically updated. We could probably figure out a way to get that information to people somehow.
Absolutely.
I'll make a note.
So Mikaila, you talking about relationships, that kind of goes nicely with the next question I was going to ask. It's like you're reading my mind. Speaking about relationships, how important, like which are the ones that are important to music supervisors? Is it the editors? Is it the producers? Is it the licensing people? And how do you maintain those relationships with your workload? Because I know most of you are working at midnight most nights. So how do you maintain it? And especially in the time of COVID, when we're on Zooms, like it's a challenge for me to stay in touch with all of you as well. So how are you guys doing it with your contacts?
Good question. Honestly, I don't even know how to fully answer how to do it in these times. I guess just random emails and Facebook messages. I like to make personal friendships with a lot of people in licensing, so just random friend check-ins is good. As far as what's important, I hate to say it, but everything is important. A lot of people think that you should, because we're hired by production end in film and television, that we should mostly be kind of keeping in touch with the people that hire us. But in truth, we can't do our job without good relationships with record labels, publishers, pitch agents, etc. So if we don't stay on their radar, mind you, I also noticed that a lot of people that are pitching active catalog will reach out to us regularly. Amy, you're amazing at that. It's also just reading mailouts that come in. There are a few companies that will have regular mailouts coming in all the time. But yeah, I would say at the beginning of a project, getting in the head of a showrunner or a producer or director or whoever is calling the majority of the shot, it's really hard to decipher on some projects. Basically, the bigger the project, the harder it is to figure out the chain of command. But getting a sense of has the final say and getting into their brain goes a long way. I've noticed even in a couple of projects, when I was really in the beginning and didn't really know anybody, I was making headway by sending pitches to people kind of cold on email. But until I really met people in person and had a bit of a conversation about their interests and their taste, even if it isn't relevant to the project that you're working on, you get a sense of the type of music that interests them. So if you notice that somebody loves a lot of like huge Britpop anthems, then maybe you'll notice that they would like really anthemic, hooky stuff, whatever the genre, like I do find that understanding somebody's personal taste will help you understand what they'll choose for their scenes a little bit. Also, having a good relationship with the editor is imperative because they will go to bat for you kind of behind the scenes, and nobody gives editors their due because editors are the secret ingredient that pull everything together. But yeah, I would say you have to keep on good terms with everyone you come into contact with. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I definitely agree. And with editors especially, they definitely don't get the credit, as you're saying. And really, if that can kind of make or break how difficult a project is, if you're in good contact with your editor or not, because they can make your job so much easier in the end. So them for sure. Sometimes, I mean, right now, lately, I've been working on projects that have really quick schedules because of COVID. So right now, like working with the composers a lot because the editors don't really have as much time. So really kind of ironing everything down right now with the composers is a big one. And as long as you have a good relationship, everything kind of goes pretty smoothly. But yeah, probably
Music
mainly
editors
those are you.
too.
Music editors, yes, thank you. Yeah, they're a big one.
Definitely agreed. And I'll speak to the ad, side of things and again more on the licensing front, but certainly, and I sort of went over some of this before in terms of like the too many cooks thing, but you 100% need to maintain relationships with everybody at the ad agency that you're interacting with, the producer that you're interacting with, the creatives that are giving you the brief and, what they're looking for. You have to have a great relationship with your employer, your direct employer, which is the audio house. You have to have, and everybody at the audio house. There are audio house producers as well. There's the creative director as well. There's people working in tech that are supporting you. And then of course there's the brand as well, because oftentimes when you're doing like finalizing some licensing stuff, there will be revisions or questions or concerns that are coming directly from the legal of the brand. So, you have these various like tiers of people, and, I mean, sometimes there's the post house as well for the edits of the spot. Yeah, it's kind of it's quite widespread in scope of who you need to interact with and have good relationships with. And that's just half of it, because obviously having the relationship with your vendors, with the people who, you know, the publishers, the labels, the music reps, the management, the artists, all of those things, those relationships are crazy, crazy, crazy important, you know?
Well, here's the other kind of an example. We work in Canada. I mean, we also, especially at the major labels, we often have to do clearance in the American office. There are so many productions happening in our country alone, much less all across America at one time. If you don't have a good relationship with the person that is going to clear your song, and you're coming up to a deadline, and you might not necessarily have $50,000, $100,000 for every license that lands on somebody's doorstep. If you don't have a good relationship with the person that is clearing the song for you, you're not going to get it cleared in a timely manner.
Yeah.
And you're not going to get it cleared for the fee that works for both the vendor and for production. So it's good sense. Like, you can't do your job effectively if you can't cut through the noise and try and get kind of first to the plate with all of the record labels and publishers, and make sure that you're being heard, because their workloads are getting massive.
Their workloads are crazy. I agree. It's like, I feel for them. I really do, when I have to follow up, or, you know, come back with some new change to the terms or anything that goes on in the process. And I'm just really sensitive to I'm always like, I hope you're well, you know, like, how's your day? You know, because I feel like it's me again, that person that won't go away. And there's probably like 100 of me doing the same thing or more. I don't know. And some of these negotiations can get so laborious and crazy. And, you know, you really, you know, it's the people that pitch the music to you, but it's also the people that negotiate the license, you know, fee with you. And it's even the people who end up then generating the license, and then you go back and forth with them for revisions. I mean, it's this whole like world of people who you want to make sure are as happy as possible. You know, the artists need to be happy, you know, with the price, the client needs to be happy with the price, the artist needs to be happy with the project. Like, it just, you know, everybody at the label and publishers who you're dealing with for the negotiation needs to not be, you know, feeling hounded, and that you're like not wasting their time with a million different requests. Like, you have to be concise, try to get all your terms together. You know, there's a lot of nuances to it, and there are a lot of relationships.
And it's a bit like broken telephone, right? Like, you're trying to disseminate all of the needs of the client and then push those to the people that are actually clearing the songs. You need to make sure that you are fully aware of exactly what the filmmaker or television production company needs. Sometimes they themselves don't even know. Also, you need to be cognizant of the fact that some of the people that you're working with in production don't understand music licensing as well as you might think they would. It's not their day-to-day, so it's your job to make sure that they understand the process. So like a good example, when it comes to in context and out of context rights. So what that means is do you have the right to use the song that you license in the context of a TV show or film outside of that original scene in a promotion or a trailer over a bunch of other footage? I've had producers who didn't understand when I told them specifically, you do not have out of context rights, what that means. And then they go cut a huge trailer with a song that they don't have clearance for and push it out to the ether. But if you don't make it clear to them, and that was a bit of a my bad because I was new and didn't realize that everybody on the other end didn't know what out of context meant. So just making sure that you're able to be very communicative without talking down to anybody. It's making sure everybody is speaking the same language can be really difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
all.
and that goes.
Oops, sorry.
Sorry. I was just gonna say that goes both ways too, with film people and music people trying to like explain either sides of it, because often the case is film people don't understand the music world at all. And you know, music people, I mean, Amy would be your position, she would know a little bit more about film, but the rest of the music industry doesn't really. So yeah, that is kind of both ways for sure.
Yeah, you often find yourself playing teacher a lot, definitely explaining there's two sides. And, you know, the highest quote usually dictates the price. It's called most favored nation. And, you know, the publishing is split up by, you know, writer splits. And, you know, like you just get into details often, or, you know, no, you can't get a song by a recognizable artist for like $3 for, you know, TV for a year. And, you know, I mean, it just, you know, there's a lot of sort of interesting things that happen, and you just, yeah, you have to be super nice and you have to play teacher often in a very polite way. Yeah.
I'm always like super stoked when there's a music supervisor on a film project because, you know, as you know, we represent Broken Social Scene, and Broken Social Scene is like the soundtrack to a lot of filmmakers' childhoods or teenage years. And so they make these like coming of age films or shorts for, you know, festivals and all this kind of stuff. And they come to me without a music supervisor and they're saying, can we get this for either free or for like $200? And there's like a billion people in that band. So, yeah. and you know, Emily Haynes is rep by BMG, and then there's Feist, who's rep by Universal, and we got to go to them and say, okay, so she's going to get like 5 cents. That's cool, right? So, you know, I see it a lot on my side, and so I have to educate these film producers, and like we had one just the other day come to us from France, and they wanted to use a Ruben in the Dark song, the song that was used in the Breaking Bad film trailer. So he wants to use it for nothing because his trailer isn't monetizing. And I was like, but you're selling a film. So and this is like one of his biggest songs. So yeah, there's gonna be a fee attached, and they're so incredulous. Like, why wouldn't you wanna be in my film? And I get it, but having a music supervisor is so important because it prevents accidents from happening because of not being informed. Because it's not really like, I mean, it is your job as a producer to know this stuff, but as long as you know enough to hire a good music supervisor, that's fine. You can concentrate on your film. Anyways, let's see here. We're flying through these questions. I think I wouldn't mind diving a bit more into budgets, because that's always the thing, right? Like we're always trying to pitch, like from a pitching standpoint, I'm always trying to pitch within budgets, but I also don't want to lose opportunity because, you know, I don't want to undercut them, but I also don't want to lose money for my artists. I'm always between the two because I want to make you guys happy, and your filmmakers happy, and your TV producers happy. But I also have to make sure I'm getting the most for my artists. And I have some artists that are mid-level, some that are young, and we get different tiers from music supervisors. We get, does this fit in this box? So it's like 5K all in. Does this one fit in like 10K and like the big recognizable for XYZ? And I'm always like, so I can put these in this box, but if you have more money, you can put it in that box, because you feel like I don't want to undercut my guys. And thankfully my relationships with the music supervisors, I can say that. I can call you and just say like, yes, I put it in this box, but if you have a scene that it works really well for that has a bigger budget, please think of us. So that's tricky. How do you guys manage that? Is it like a cold, hard no, it's got to fit in this 5K box? Do I just send the 5K box to the editors, or do you have wiggle room there? How does that work?
Yeah, for me, I really appreciate when publishers and labels pitch songs as like, we would prefer it's in this range, but we're flexible to go this range or whatever, just because that is the case. Often, like, I'll be on a movie that just has the most tight budget and I can't pitch these things because of that. But there are projects that have a little bit more room, and I agree with you. Like, I want to make a right fee, a fair fee for the artist as well. So yeah, if I can do that, then I'd like to do that. But yeah, so I mean, I just appreciate when people kind of communicate that these are the ranges. Of course, everybody wants the most, but not always going to happen. Some people would just prefer to kind of get the placement. So yeah, definitely communicating that is a big one for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think in the ad licensing world, you know, it's sort of, the expectation is like, if you're sending music to clients, it better fit in the budget. It seems quite rigid. It's very rare that you get like a loosey-goosey kind of thing, but once in a while you hear like, look, if it's the perfect song, they might come up with the money. But I feel like that rarely happens. It's almost like a mythological thing. So, you know, what I do is I always make sure to include the budget and the terms that I have, like the ones that I am aware of, because sometimes it's true the terms will change throughout the negotiation. They'll decide to add more media or whatever. But yeah, I include those in the brief, which is a description of what I am looking for. And I think that's like really critical for the ad side of things. And I also do appreciate when someone says, look, this is probably out of budget, but I thought I would send it. Like, I like the heads up, at least. It does help me to sort of, if I know something that they don't, I could just put it aside and be like, this might be the special mythological thing. So yeah, that's kind of my experience with budgets. And again, everything has to fit into the budget. So it's no longer just the master fee and the publishing side fee. You know, now you've got the unions that need to fit into the budget, and you know, the musicians union or SAG-AFTRA, you know, possibly on the master. Sometimes you even have to pay if the spot's airing in Quebec territory, and they're using a song that has a singer that's not part of the Quebec union, the UDA. You have to pay them too. So, you know, budgets have to be adhered to in, you know, in a major way in advertising. And those are just some of the variables and challenges.
Hey, Danielle, sorry, I'm just going to stop for 1 sec. I want to ask you a question. Is there somewhere that people could go and read up these rules? Because I know the ACTRA, SAG, AFM thing has been a total brain, like even
Yeah.
for me, it took me forever to figure out what was considered a union contract and what wasn't. So if there's some reading materials that people can check into, that would be probably very helpful.
Yeah, I mean, you know, when I'm investigating this, I am reaching out to CFM, AFM, and I'm providing them with, you know, information like the song title, album title, release date, and the same applies to SAG-AFTRA. But yes, SAG-AFTRA has like a document that explains what the rates are, and how it works with locals, like Canadian spots versus US spots and things like that. There is that information. And with the musicians unions, like even in the UK, you could potentially have to pay on the master if it's under contract with the musicians union in the UK. But I think some of it has just been through the guild, and some of it is, some of it is that we've been given those materials, or we're aware of it, and you know, we know now where to look. So it's not super, there's no one resource that I know of, but it's starting to become more easy to access, more available. And I think a lot of these fees are also somewhat newer too. So that's a bit part of it as well. But we're working on gathering that material. And we do, as supervisors, get access to it now through the Guild. And before it would just be on your own, a bit willy-nilly.
Mm-hmm. I mean, going back to relationships, having relationships with your rep at the AFM, CFM, SAG-AFTRA, those are also incredibly important because the materials that they have posted online aren't always necessarily right up to date because this is changing so quickly. You can see a bunch of different answers to the same question, depending on who you ask, even sometimes depending on who you ask at the union, because everybody is trying to get on the same page. It's a bit of a learning curve at the moment. In the coming years, it will become easier. But yeah, I would say first check whatever you can find, any resources online, and then confirm with a rep at the union. If you ever have that.
I agree. It could change even. You could end up somewhat negotiating a little bit with AFM, CFM, depending on the terms, the rights, the media used, TV, film, et cetera, like if it's short term or, but they only have a rate that applies to like a longer term thing. They'll sometimes like cut you a deal. That's not always stuff you can like access anywhere online. It is a bit of a trial and error thing, but I do agree you should have relationships with those people, get the latest rate cards, but then confirm things. Don't be afraid to look stupid because in the end, your clients, you're not going to get sued.
You'll look a lot less stupid up front than you will if you get it wrong later.
Yeah.
We're almost out of time here. We're about to jump into questions. But I had one question for you. It's kind of a fun one. What's your favorite sync story or your least favorite sync story? You get to choose one. Let's start with Danielle because she's in my screen right now.
Okay. Like I was laughing and boy, do I regret that. Well, I had like a lot of things that like a few notes that I wrote about things that were, aggravations, hard, last minute stuff, last minute down to the wire things because artists were, off gallivanting somewhere impossible to reach, or, you couldn't, again, with the musicians unions, they couldn't confirm all the writers, all the musicians rather on the master, like things like that. They come up undoubtedly, but I just want to be positive and say that, because we've talked a lot about the realities, but I will say that in ad, as much as there are many cooks, I've had the opportunity to work on some spots where I've been able to feature up and coming artists. And that's been really inspiring to me. It's more of a positive thing. Like ad stuff it has its obstacles and challenges and complexities. But oftentimes you can like help break an artist. I've done projects where, like, for example, I did a Rogers Legacy spot and they wanted an up-and-coming local artist. We licensed Bellwoods, and then Rogers put Bellwoods on their Rogers radio stations, and that was really cool. Or there was something else that was fun. Oh yeah, the Astro yogurt spot that's always on air. It's featuring Dan Talevsky, another local artist. And the spot was completely shot around his song, and the actress in the spot is lip syncing to Dan's music, and stuff like that makes me excited. It's fun, and I can only imagine what it's like to like really break an artist. There's been so many exciting stories of artists getting their start, but ultimately, I think this is like these little things like that are very exciting to me. In the role of music supervisor. So that's my little rainbow.
That's awesome. Unfortunately, we're going to have to jump. Well, not fortunately, and unfortunately, we're going to miss out on your two responses to that because we got to jump into questions now. We have some good ones. Oh, no, D'Andrea's yelling at me that we do have time. So Mikaila, you're next.
Okay. So I think that the like wild card of my job has tended to be custom recordings. We don't do it for every project that we work on, but every once in a while we'll be tapped to get an artist to create either a cover or a completely original song for a television show or movie. And I've had my worst ever experience at work doing that and my best ever experience at work doing that. My favorite ever opportunity to date was definitely working on The Grizzlies, which is a Canadian show or film about kids in Iqaluit, Nunavut, or actually Kugluktuk, Nunavut, who joined a lacrosse team and basically turned around and reinvigorated the spirit of the town. It was the suicide capital of North America before the emergence of this lacrosse team. And afterwards, there was not one single suicide in the surrounding years. So that was really inspiring for many reasons, but one of them was that I was able to fly a bunch of independent artists to Toronto to work in a studio in Toronto with one of the former Tribe Called Red artists, DJs, and have them create custom music for the film. That was amazing for so many reasons, but also just watching kids that really idolize somebody in the industry have an opportunity to work directly with them and having you facilitate that with them. And also weighing in a little bit on creative to picture, and also just featuring a bunch of amazing Indigenous artists from this country that often don't get the sync love or just the general awareness and that they deserve, because it's honestly one of the most incredible experiences of my life. I had pneumonia when I was trying to finish these recordings and got antibiotics and stayed quarantined in the back of the studio. And I was working, I think I worked probably 80 hours that week, literally just like slept, woke up, got back to it, slept, woke up, got back to it. And I regret nothing. It was awesome. So
Amazing. Thanks.
So awesome.
Are you, Sian? You're up.
I don't know. I mean, there are a lot of like really cool things, like Danielle and Mikaila were saying about just getting to license that up and coming Canadian artist is such a great feeling. And working on like a lot of US productions that I do, they often don't know, or the producers or the network doesn't know of these artists. So it's really fun to kind of bring them in and introduce them, and kind of, yeah. So that's really awesome part. On the flip side, the horror story, I had one show a few years ago and they were singing, so they had a Christmas Carol choir, they were all singing, written into the script, I guess. And they ended up last minute scramble, which happens a lot on film sets. Basically, they didn't have the lyrics, and so they Googled them, even though I'm pretty sure I sent them. But so they Googled them, and they ended up singing like a copyrighted version of a public domain carol. So I didn't find this out until the composer was working on it. And he's like, I think this is something else. And turns out it was, and we had to get it cleared. It worked out in the end and everything was fine. But yeah, there are a lot of little things like that, like not everybody really understands how this works. And yeah, you kind of have to, a lot of urgent life-saving kind of thing. So yeah, that's kind of
that happened. My husband was working on a film. He's a sound designer, and the same thing happened on a live action film that he did. They didn't mic placement for a choir. It was just a disaster anyway. So I remember hearing him swearing in his about that. So yeah.
Yeah, I feel like it happens a lot.
He'll think it's fun.
Yeah.
All right, so I've got a question for you guys. It seems like in addition to knowledge of licensing, there are other skill sets you need, such as project management, etc. What other education or skills do you recommend people to build on? Who wants to take that?
I mean, being able to work on Excel, like understanding Excel. I find I'm on Excel a lot. And I ended up taking an Excel course, which I actually, at the time, I wasn't really thinking it was anything useful, but I use it all the time now.
Me too. I took
so
the same
that's,
course.
yeah. So for sure, that's a big one. So a lot of different things like understanding different technologies and stuff. But yeah, being able to manage your time, and I find like keeping a to-do list super helpful. Also, because there's just so many different moving parts, and also for your own self, for me to be able to like, okay, I can stop working for today if I do all these things tomorrow. So that's a big thing. Anyone else?
Yeah, totally. Being able to self-motivate and to stick to a schedule is super helpful. Attention to detail. People don't realize how that can just burn you. Quick anecdote. This actually isn't even my project, but I heard about it through a friend, and it kills me to this day. A music supervisor worked on a friend of mine's film and licensed a huge song in the first 30, 40 seconds of the film from a very difficult publisher. And by difficult, I just mean tends not to answer as much, tends to clear in really high brackets. And this publisher cleared the song for a reasonable fee, saw the movie, and realized that the song played for 5 seconds through the opening title card, said, that's a breach of contract. The entire deal is void. We have to renegotiate for $100,000 more. So they literally increased the music budget by, at the end of all of the little blips in the supervision, there are about $260,000 in music overages alone on an indie film. So
Jeez.
when you don't pay attention to the little details, someone will,
Yeah.
you know, and at some point, someone will catch you, and you'll look terrible for your client. You'll feel terrible yourself. So definitely every piece of paperwork matters. Every conversation on the phone matters. And I would also say, yeah, definitely technology, as you were saying. I think like any other job in creative industry, you end up compiling roles. And on indie film, I'll often work as a music editor. So I have knowledge of Pro Tools and how to edit my songs, and that comes in handy a lot. I would say definitely people don't realize how important it is to have the art of negotiation down, because you have to be able to make a good case for the filmmaker or production company that you're representing. But you also need to be transparent, and there is a delicate balancing act to that you either can do or can't do. But in addition, also realizing that there is a significant difference between having good taste in music and having good taste in music laid up to film. It's about storytelling more than it is about curating. And I don't think that that's something that you can hone it. People can get better at it. But I think that there is a bit of an instinctive thing that you require in order to be really, really good at your job that way. Danielle?
I'm muted. I just agree with everything you said so wholeheartedly that I was just like, yeah, you nailed it. You just nailed it. You know, yeah, you have to make sure that you are literally looking at every little potential detail that may increase price, you know, and you know, and making sure that you're talking to all the rights owners. and clearing with all the rights owners, you don't want to miss out on 5% of the publishing hidden somewhere. You've got to do that math. It's so critical. I also sometimes edit tracks to spots at home. I do have a background also in media stuff. So, that's come in handy. Understanding what goes on behind the scenes in different productions is really handy, so you can really like empathize with people in their different roles that you're working with and the media itself. And you can recognize what's going to end up going into these licenses if there's, so you can say, yeah, the title, actually, the music plays over 3 seconds of the title, and then we go into the credits or, whatever, then we go into the scene. You totally nailed it. I'm with you.
That's actually another one. You reminded me of another, and I didn't realize it until I was on the job. Understanding film post-production is super critical because your timelines are dependent on the production timelines. If you can't read the post-production schedule, then you're going to be sending things late. You're going to be sending things to the wrong people at the wrong stage. So make sure you understand filmmaking in addition to music licensing. The best of your ability, at least filmmaking in post and audio engineering. And like, if you're starting mix on this day and your playback is this day, when are you supposed to send the songs? Like you need to know the nuances of the schedule in order to do your job well.
Yeah. Very important.
Sure.
Very important.
These are all amazing points. It would be my nightmare. I'm the most disorganized person, and that's why I have a Chloe. She does all of my organization for me. Anyways,
I have a Chloe. I want a Chloe.
You can't have her. She's not. So here's another question. Do you look at licensing music from other countries?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I would assume you all would, right?
Oh, yeah. Sometimes you'll have to like set an alarm to get up on another time zone that is just outrageous. Like my favorite story was when I was working on Vikings and I had to get a hold of an Orthodox Greek priest and I had to get up in the middle of the night to like speak to somebody who could barely speak English. And that's the other thing. It's a global job. You have to figure out how to communicate with people
100% in Japan,
all over the world. Yeah.
Trying to license the song. I mean, yeah.
Totally. And also I think like it's a misconception that on every single Canadian television show, we only use Canadian music. Sometimes we'll get the directive that yes, we need to use X number of Canadian music for this project because it's on this network, whatever. But, often we'll be able to kind of look anywhere and find the right thing that fits, regardless of where it's from.
And sometimes the project itself just calls for music from a different territory, a different part of the world. And that's the project. That's all the music that's in the project. We're focusing on that area. And yeah, it's a very interesting, mind-opening process when you're working like that. You get to learn a lot about the music, but you also have to learn to communicate and deal with the obstacles.
And that's the other thing. A lot of people look at the sound of a TV show and they think that everything that goes into that TV show, like for instance, Grey's Anatomy, everybody can think immediately what the Grey's Anatomy soundtrack sounds like, but that's not all of the licensed music used. You're also forgetting background spots. If the Grey's Anatomy team goes to a salsa night somewhere and you're going to be sourcing music there, even projects that you wouldn't necessarily think call for world music, sometimes, or actually quite often do. It just depends on what, and that's called diegetic music for anybody that's wondering, when music occurs in the natural environment where the characters are in. I think that you get a lot of diversity in sound from that. So
that's great. I have another one. When starting off as early music supervisors, especially working with local film directors, have you ever encountered directors who want to learn all aspects of what you do so they can do it themselves in the future without using a music supervisor? And if so, how did you or do you navigate these dynamics? I feel like I have to read that again. That's a really long question. Did you guys get it all?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
good.
you get the idea.
Good.
Who wants
Who wants to
go?
go first? Mikaila, you're in my window. Calling on you.
Cool. So I think anytime that you get the sense that perhaps an indie filmmaker wants to know how to do the job, they'll realize very quickly that they don't have the time or resources or means to do it. So I think I'm always quite transparent with anybody, anybody that wants to get into the field. But I think the more that you know about music supervision and licensing, the more you realize that you really do have to devote your mind and energy and headspace to it for a lot of hours in order to do it effectively. I'm actually working with a filmmaker right now that was an independent film that got through production without a music supervisor, but then got to the other side and was like, oh crap, I don't know how to do any of the things that we need to deliver to the distribution company. So even projects that truly cannot afford a music supervisor really struggle to get through all of the pieces. So I think, and sometimes I'll offer some insight to a friend, but I'll help them on their case basis. But I think the next project, they'll know better than to try and do it themselves. They'll try and consult with somebody from the beginning because this stuff can make or break your delivery.
Yeah, I love getting, reached out to from independent filmmakers, writers, directors, and they've gone down the road. They've started down the road of supervision, and in clearance, and they're like, yeah, it's cleared, I think, but I just want someone to look it over. And they've got like a deal memo from the master side or something. So I'm like, no, don't do that.
Yeah.
If you can help it, don't, because it's just getting more complicated now than ever. So unless you know somebody who owns all their music and there's no ties to a label, to a publisher, it's literally coming straight from them, and you can make a deal to use it in perpetuity, all media, whatever, blah, blah, blah. It's kind of a bit risky.
It's definitely a full-time job, and there are a lot of different parameters and things you have to deal with, and it's not something you can kind of just like pick up and DIY.
Yeah.
It's definitely quite many different moving parts. So I wouldn't suggest doing it yourself unless you've been down
without budgets. Like,
like what I was saying earlier, as a licensing person, I hate it when independent, well, I don't hate it, that's a hard word, but I don't love it when a producer comes to me and they're not working with a supervisor. I love it when it's a supervisor that comes to me because I know it's going to be quick and easy and clear, and it's not going to take 300 emails for a 500 all-in budget spot. Do you know what I mean? Which has happened to me before, and it's the worst thing ever. So it's such a ginormous waste of everybody's time. So yeah, no, I always just hire a music supervisor. We have one more question here. This is kind of, it'll be interesting how we both do this because it's kind of referring to licensing people too. It says, can you address pricing? How do we, an artist, sync agency, or similar, price a track? Both if we get a specific request on a track or in general pitching. So this is tricky. So I do the licensing too. I'm trying to push it like Chloe is doing it more just to create some separation. And also I'm like super crammed for time. So Chloe does it for the most part now. But when I started doing licensing, the trickiest part was when a music supervisor sent me, I have this like television show. These are the terms. What is your quote? And I was like, I have no idea. What's your budget? Like, what do you, like, how many songs do you have in this episode? What, Like, it's very hard for licensors to read your mind, and it's scary because we don't want to come in and undercut when you really have a budget that's much bigger than what we're coming in. And that, when I started arts and crafts, I actually did that once, where I underquoted one of my writers for a US network. And because I had no history, he'd never gotten a sync before, so I had nothing to compare it to. I was just pulling numbers out of the sky, and I totally underquoted.
Yeah.
So I don't do that anymore. I usually follow up with, what's your budget? How many songs do you have in an episode? What are you hoping for? Because then I can go to management and be like, okay, so this is what they're hoping for. What are you thinking? If I go to management and go, then they're like, what the hell am I paying you? Like, why are you looking after my writer? Like, what do you think? So it's tricky on our end.
Totally.
How about with you? I know it's a negotiation tactic. I get it, because we do the same for other things. But love to hear your take on that.
Well, Amy, for the record, nobody can expect you to be perfect 125% of the time.
I try so hard, though. No, just kidding.
But we all make mistakes, and I think that that's something that is worth mentioning. Nobody's perfect. Certainly not me. I'm sure nobody in this Zoom has had a perfect experience doing their job. It's nearly impossible to get it right all the time. But yeah, I'm very transparent, and I'll say, this is our music budget. This is our per episode budget. This is kind of the going rate that we have for this type of use. But budgets are really, like Amy, you mentioned already, dictated by the type of use. If it's like a visual vocal, it'll usually run a little higher. If it's a theme vocal, it'll run a little higher, or a little less, but still high, than say like a background spot where you can really barely hear it for 30 seconds in the back of a coffee shop. So we tend to price things based on the duration, how integral they are to the action in the film or TV show. And I tend to really lay all of my cards out on the table when I'm approaching labels and publishers, because I think everybody appreciates candor. And I try not to ask for things that I think are ungettable, right? Like, I'm not going to come to Amy with $200 for Broken Social Scene for a huge network television thing, you know? But when it comes to pricing, I think it has a lot to do with the media too. I think that, Danielle, you can probably speak more to that with ads.
Yeah, big time. Yeah.
Yeah. But
in your case, it's like the budget of the production and what the going rate is for like the majority of songs. In the episode,
television is generally all media, right?
Yeah.
And that's not the case for ads.
Exactly. Yeah. So we have all this media stuff, and it totally defines the budget. Other things like that you mentioned, recognizability of the song, recognizability of the artist, size of the campaign, but the brand, size being, the media, and spots, so the rights, is it online? Is it TV? Is it PR, industrial? Is it, there's all these different things. Is the online using paid media, meaning like, is there pre-roll, are they advertising, paying money to advertise on Facebook, things like that. All that stuff determines the price, as well as, how big the artist is and how recognizable the song is. Is the brand a big brand? That's sort of the world of advertising. And yes, I don't like to, I want to get the negotiation done, and I'm not hiding things either. I just want everybody to be happy, and I want it to be, it's very important that it's fair, because again, those relationships are so important. So, you really just want to do right by your client, and you want to do right by your vendors, the people that you work with, that you rely on, the symbiotic relationship that you have with them, and that you couldn't really function without them. That's so much a part of your value. So, yeah.
The unfortunate
thing
is,
for sure.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
The unfortunate thing is when when you start with a budget that's almost impossible to work with. That can be really challenging. We always do our best, but there have been cases where we'll literally have to say to indie filmmakers, the number of spots that you've slotted into this script, it doesn't compute to the amount of overall money that you have, which is unfortunate, but it happens. So yeah, that's all I was going to say. Sean, sorry, I didn't mean to step on your toes.
No.
You're
No, I totally agree. But yeah, it is really tricky, and like for both sides too. I mean, like we can come across songs with maybe more obscure publishers. Most are wonderful, but some that are really difficult and quote really huge numbers that don't really make any sense and aren't really fair for the uses. Like, so we kind of have to work around that, and it is kind of just the art of negotiating, for sure. But yeah, I mean, being transparent is the best you can do. Yeah, just kind of working with what you got.
That's awesome. Well, we have to wrap it up now. So thank you all for joining us. Thank you to the amazing panelists. You guys killed it. If you guys want to stay online at 6 o'clock, there is a new panel called Sink It Like It's Hot. Love that title. Oh, sorry, my kids are in the background. Sorry, y'all. Also, this is a reminder to send in your donations to either Black Youth Helpline or Black Mental Health. The links will be shared again in the chat. Thanks again, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.